The assassination attempt a couple of days ago on former US president and current front runner in this year's presidential election, Donald Trump, has obviously been making headlines. It's been making headlines, and in the age of social media, which wasn't around I think the last time there was such an attempt was Reagan, right? Unless I'm missing something in between. People, we get some voices are amplified more than others. I mean, in many senses, it's a good thing. Our voices are amplified. Nobody would let us on TV, but they let us on YouTube for now. But some of those voices, sound really stupid and evil at the same time, which we know is a bad combo. Each of those alone is bad. The combo is even worse. Welcome to the reality show. I'm joined by Marco and Richard. Uh, Let me get your initial thoughts on the assassination attempt and what we've seen in the less than 48 hours since.
Okay, well, it's difficult to know where to start here, but I think saying it's no surprise is probably fair, given that we all know how febrile the atmosphere has been for a long time now, and we all know that intensity of feeling has come from all sides at different levels at different times, but is certainly only ever seemed to ramp up. And of course, seen through the lens of social media, every commentator on things, whether it's a Joe teenager in their basement or some rapper with a Twitter account, they're all trying to get attention, and they're all trying to get the biggest amount of followers and clicks they can. And that means making the most outrageous comments they can all the time throughout the recent period. So all of that adds to, fuel on the fire for things becoming more intense, more extreme. And what would have once been like the kind of pub banter you would have seen, or locker room talk, becomes the general form of discourse. And but of course, that's the online world. The offline world is influenced by it to some extent, but it's also not totally the same. And I think we need to recognize that there is a difference between real life. And a lot of the people who I kind of tend to think of the internet as a bit of like certainly social media, as a bit like a ring of Gyges type of thing, where people are suddenly invisible and can say all of the and do all of the things that they would never do if they could be identified in real life, or if they could be thumped by somebody on the other side of the bar in real life. But on the internet, they're prepared to let loose and goad and attack and say all sorts of things they would never say in real life. So I think there's a need to step back from some of the reaction to stuff, but also a lot of that has been what's led up to this point and made it an event which was horrific and terrible, and something, obviously everybody condemns, or everybody should condemn, but again is no real surprise. And that in itself, even saying that sentence, the idea that a front runner in the US, that a former president should, be the victim of an assassination attempt, saying that's no surprise, that is a shocking thing. We need to, pause on that fact alone.
Yeah, and the real world means that at least one innocent victim, innocent person has died because of the consequence of what people tend to talk about in the privacy of the bedroom on the laptops, or and two people have been injured. It could have been much, much worse. Could have been a hack over 36 hours if the assassination were to be successful. It would have been a much different story. Of course, as I mentioned, it's not going to be any better for the people directly affected by this shooting. Not least the family of the kid who perpetrated the shooting, the attempt. To me, apart from the expected reaction, the irrational reaction that we see on media, people saying, "Oh, they should have been more accurate," and people say, "Oh, it's all the less fault." Each side blames each other, and some people come up with irrational comparisons, like for example, Raisi and Dave, they equate the two attempts with the deaths of the proper bad guys you should celebrate the death of, compared to the attempt of a life of a politician in a Western democracy. the Western democracy, the United States. What is particularly sinister to me is actually that we are living in a society which which motivates a 20-year-old to take those kind of action, to try and kill the former president of the United States and probably the next one. And this is, if you like, the most depressing aspect of this event, that everything out there, as I said earlier on in a previous episode, Trump was the result of 8 years of Obama. He was the produce of 8 years of Obama in a way, and this kind of action is again the result of the last period. The culture has not got any better in terms of being more rational, and there's been a polarization towards irrationality on the left and on the right, and this is unfortunately the concretization of that kind of ideology and culture that we've been living in.
Yeah, I mean, I've come across things, even when not looking for them. And one of the things I came across today, I was going through. I know we don't mention trolls from the chat, but I will mention these people by name. I was looking through Zachary Foster, this despicable historian of Palestine from Princeton University, just looking through his stuff generally for his justifications of the Palestinians and their attempts to murder Jews. He retweeted somebody called Asal Rad, who is also a has a PhD in modern Middle East history and has a book published by Cambridge University Press. So she tweeted a screenshot of Israel Katz, Israel's foreign minister, of two different tweets of his in on the same day, on Saturday. First one saying the operation to eliminate Hamas military leader in Gaza, Mohammed Deif, and Khan Yunis brigade commander Rafa Salameh is more than justified. That's the first tweet. The second one is, I am shocked by the shooting at the 45th president of the US, Donald Trump. I pray for his speedy recovery. Violence can never be part of politics. Now, there's so much bad things that can be said about Israel Katz and Israel's foreign policy. These two tweets, I wouldn't pray, but there's nothing super offensive and unusually offensive there. You would think, but this professor wrote the following about the screenshot. Justifying a massacre of civilians, then condemning political violence is quite the timeline. And so yeah, I found it because Zachary Foster retweeted it. It's so you have people, and these are people in positions of influence. They influence the minds of young people, and they're go-to experts for media outlets and so on. Like this guy is, he's done quite a few interviews when I was looking him up, and they can say something like this and their audience will be like, yeah, why are we condemning a assassination attempt at our president? And one of the leaders of I'm adding to her argument, the elected government of Hamas, of the Palestinians, Hamas, that's somehow okay. Uh, so yeah, this is again, this is part of the reaction, but a reaction that you get, and you get bad stuff from many different directions in reactions to what happened on Saturday. But this to me kind of sticks out as you could get away with that. It says something about the culture.
Yeah, and its attempt just to get the audience, on the Twitter sphere or wherever, just to shout, "Yeah, man, that's not fair," and that's the level of thinking that is being, well, evaded really, but that's the level of response that people are trying to get out of other people. Essentially, they're making sure they don't think, and the point is that for each and every one of us, the onus is on ourselves to turn on your mind, to make your mind active and focused, and to consider, hang on a minute, I'm being presented with A and B as being told that they're the same thing. Are they really? Even if I disagree with either one of them or agree with either one of them strongly, is that really a fair argument? because I think one of the crucial things that everybody needs to do is question even the candidates or the side of an argument that they support, is to really examine it and to look at what its flaws are and what the counter argument to those flaws is. So you make sure you've got a proper understanding for it, and it's not an emotional, reactive response for this is my team. And I think that's what this whole period reminds me of, and what these political leaders remind me of, including Trump, of course, is like an American football coach who is, got his team players in the locker room, is goading them up, trying to whip them up into a frenzy ahead of leading them out on the pitch, so they do the best, get the best result they can. But of course, all of that is necessary, providing that people can then remember that it's not, it shouldn't end in a punch up afterwards. That there is a purpose to it, and a time and a place for it, and of course there's a context for it, and of course making it clear to people when something is hyperbole and when it isn't, or at least when you hear hyperbole, understanding when it is, when it's an exaggeration, and interpreting it properly is part of the challenge here. And it's a challenge that the media has frequently chosen to deliberately ignore all the time, partly, of course, because it's competing with the same loud social media voices that only want to ramp up and shout and yell and create a ruckus. So the mainstream media does the same and tries to create a ruckus just to keep its place, supposedly relevant in the messy, irrational culture which we currently live in.
This kind of polarization, which tend to concentrate, especially in politics, because the politics is the easiest kind of teams to join. You even got different colors you can like and dislike. But it's effectively the culmination of the bully culture that we've been seeing coming to the surface recently. That's why you can explain the pro-Hamas protests in the streets. Effectively, they're bullies trying to shut down the other side. Just look at the way they behave when they come across the counter protests from the Israeli side, or any side who's arguing for civilization. It's the same thing as happening in the campuses. And it's the same thing that was happening during the lockdown. Anyone who was anti-lockdown was slapped down like it was the worst scam on earth, by the main media, not just by the official bodies, but the media were actually calling people names, and let alone talking about the compulsory people against the compulsory vaccinations. It's been a culmination of a period where if you dissent, you're seen as a legitimate target to be slapped down, and any kind of violence and words, bad words towards you, is justified under the point of view. And that kind of translates into this activism, which is mainly on the left, but we've seen, unfortunately, on the right as well, because rather than having a separation between this party is irrational, the other one is being more rational, they're actually racing between them to see which one is the most irrational. And this continuous use of emotionalism by the hyperboles that Richie was mentioning, or using terms and pictures and images and comparison, which are just designed to inflame people's emotions, and then override their thinking and make them act, is exactly what's been used lately. And this is quite obvious in the reaction of the main medias. The media have been so open about making, for example, comparison of Trump's and Hitler, and even you had research from university like Oxford comparing Hitler, Nazism, and Trump, which is utterly idiotic to start with. But their response now is fairly muted, because they know that they're partially responsible for what's just happened. They know that they're responsible for the kind of radicalization of people in terms of the way they polarize for their own party, and they don't see the other side as just a political adversary, not an existential adversary. It's just policies. Ultimately, especially in the West, left or right, more or less become the same thing. So there's no really point in focusing on this kind of violence between the groups. And ultimately, what we see is a kind of use of violence, which is the natural consequence of just thinking via emotion and not actually thinking rationally.
Yeah, you mentioned people were condemned and ridiculed for being against lockdowns. People were condemned and ridiculed for expressing an opinion against lockdowns. But on the other hand, if you express an opinion in favor of lockdowns and then you participate in protests and riots like the Black Lives Matter riots of that summer, maybe those people, many of those people in those protests were supportive of lockdowns, but they didn't follow them, and this was encouraged by the media. And this was an instance, by the way, as well, of political violence that was encouraged as such, and encouraged even in the context of the lockdown that we were told was a good idea. So yeah, that was an interesting time that definitely has contributed to where we are now. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Oh, BC says in the context of us being on TV. He says, Razi, I'd watch you on TV. Well, thank you. And call your cable provider or satellite provider and let them know that this show should be on television. I mean, we'll have to have commercial breaks, but we do occasionally have advertisers. Here, we'll have some later this week as well. Um, Stedman, thank you. Stedman says, I enjoy Razi's humor, even when dark humor. Thanks. I enjoy that humor as well, although later I always worry if I'm about to get canceled. But anyway, as long as we can, we'll keep joking. Um, so one of the things that's getting reactions that are understandable is that photo of Trump, which I think is going to be, it's one of the most iconic. Many decades now, people will be talking about that photo. Him just being shot, and I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he said, if I'm going to get shot anywhere in the head, I want it to be, the top of the ear. But he wasn't being shot at the top of the ear. He was being shot, the guy shot to kill him and missed, or didn't get what he was going for. But yeah, him standing up, with a fist in the sky and the American flag behind him, it's a good look for him, and it's a good look at a good time for him, because Biden has been kind of Trump is still outlandish and horrible in so many ways, but people have gotten used to that over the past 9 years or so since he first announced he's running for president. That Biden is now more of a story in this election than Trump, and when Trump is a story, this thing is not going to hurt him. Besides hurting his ear, but it's not going to hurt him electorally. And yeah, of course, that as conspiracy theories go, that contributes to another type of idiotic reaction to this, which is, well, maybe this was all planned. I don't know actually if we should even uh, give that any kind of airtime here, but if either of you has anything to say about that, feel free, and if not, feel free not to.
Sure. I think certainly on the photo as an example, I mean, obviously all of those Trump rallies are intended to be surrounded by American flags. And of course, frequently during the rally, even before he comes on the stage, Trump raises his fist in the air, and that is part of his shtick, isn't it? To be honest, and the music that he arrives to, and all of that showmanship and stuff is already in there. So the fact that after an event like this, the thing that he's able to do is to raise his fist and stand in front of a flag. It's already set up. That's what he would do anyway at any moment. So he's just carrying on. And of course, there is an iconic photo there, obviously, and there is an immediate contrast with the fact that you have on the other side a president who is struggling to finish a sentence, and all of the stuff that we know about Biden and the NATO summit being the chance, his last chance to perform after the dodgy debate, which revealed a lot of what we knew already across the last 4 years, but has been sort of suppressed and pretended not to exist half the time, or at least diminished. So the contrast is enormous, and that is probably the thing which ultimately will decide the election. Although you would like the elections to be decided on policy, on people thinking, but of course, we're talking about this emotionally irrational age where an image, a mental image of the two possible candidates in many voters' eyes, regardless of which country we're talking about, will be what decides where their cross goes in the box. So that is probably the truth of this, and I think that's what also makes this a particular moment where things could move on a little bit. It could now not be quite so febrile. If I put my most positive hat on, I'm not saying this will be the case, but if I put my most positive hat on for a second, this is an opportunity for Trump at the National Congress in Missouri to do a speech which does unify. He's already said he would throw away the speech where he was going to essentially attack Biden a lot. I'm sure he'll still be attacking Biden a lot. I'm sure he won't be able to keep it in his pants, as it were. He won't be able to keep himself under control. He will at some extent stick some jibes in as ever, because that's the sort of personality he is. But there is an opportunity here to try and say, okay, the election is more or less decided. At least maybe he might think, I don't have to pummel the opposition. I can try and rise above it slightly. That's what I hope, and what I hope is that there's an opportunity for everybody to think we really don't want this super febrile atmosphere, and we should dial it down a bit, and that includes everyone's rhetoric, because everyone's rhetoric here has been quite abysmal, quite honestly. And if you were a visitor from 10 years ago who'd been given a 10-minute window of what life is like now, you would be frankly appalled at the world that we're currently in, and the discourse and the kind of discussions that are had on TV. It's like all of TV everywhere has turned into Italian television.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that this was a photo opportunity is just frankly laughable. As I mentioned earlier on, one person died for it and two were seriously injured. So, nobody can even suggest this was a frame or a setup. What actually strikes me is it's the kind of character that shows for Trump. I mean, if I have to have a president of the United States, I much rather have somebody who, after he's shot, it doesn't cower away or doesn't hide away, or whatever. But his first instinctive reaction is to show, I'm all right, and don't do anything stupid. I'm all right. I'll be back, kind of thing. And I think that was unusually good for Trump, to be honest. And it clearly it was a reaction of the moment. It wasn't rehearsed. Yes, he's used to this kind of stuff. He's used to camera media. It was kind of dramatics going on. But at this particular point, I'm sure that it was his real character he showed. And to be honest, the very nature of the event just really, showing how great American is, all this kind of stuff, that his reaction was more than appropriate, I think. And contrast with Biden sitting in the Oval Office talking about battle boxes and mentioning the former Trump instead of former President Trump. Honestly.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought, you know what, that's not as bad as it's usually like it's better when he reads from a teleprompter that's kind of closer to him. Yeah, a couple of things, Richard. One is, can I borrow your most positive hat? Because I think I need it. Also, you said we would like the elections to be decided on policy. What policy? Have you heard any policy? I mean, when I hear policy, I'd rather not hear it because of how bad it is. But yes, in theory, I agree with you. That's a nice utopia to imagine. Uh, all right, a few things. One is the speculation about the motives of the shooter. Now, look, uh, we're gonna know this stuff. It's gonna come out to some extent, and so yeah, I understand that people kind of want to know before you do know. That's how things work. Like you pursue knowledge and you'd like to get there. Um, but yeah, it seems to be too easy. He's a registered Republican, therefore maybe it's all one big conspiracy. He used to be a Democrat, therefore, like, this guy, is 20 years old. He could just be an idiot. There's a lot of possibilities there. Let's wait for it to be investigated. Um, the talk of incitement is something that I've never been a fan of. When I was, how old was I? 12, living in Israel, the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, and there was a complete witch hunt by the left after that about everything right-wing people said against Rabin, and Netanyahu, of course, was accused of, he was the leader of the opposition at the time. Uh, Not even longtime viewers, but viewers of this channel from at least the past hour will know that I'm no fan of Netanyahu. But I really dislike that. Maybe not as a 12-year-old, but later looking back at it, and it was in Israel, at least, it was very much, it seemed like an attack on free speech. It seemed like they were saying, there's if you expand what incitement means, you're shrinking what free speech includes. So I would be very, very careful of that. That being said, the rhetoric is terrible across the board, and of course against Trump there has been terrible rhetoric, but I don't know that it's that different. I mean, I remember George W. Bush, especially when the Iraq War was happening, he was called a Nazi all the time, and it does take one person to decide I'm gonna shoot the president or the nominee or whoever for that to happen. So. Yeah, people should think before they talk, but then again, the fact that somebody spoke without thinking does not mean, okay, you're off the hook if you shoot someone.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you shouldn't assume the motives, and you shouldn't just say it because somebody says something that is justifying the action of the killer. That's certainly not true. However, among the people who kept making comparison with the Nazis and Trump, it was also Hillary Clinton. I mean, somebody like her would never have made a jibe like that to Bush, for example. That would have never occurred at the point that the major political rival, makes that kind of statement against their political rival. Bear in mind, there is still Hillary Clinton, who's the woman who made the point about what was it, the thing about the cars, the river blast. No, it was the bloodbath. The controversy came from Hillary Clinton when she actually deliberately misquoted what he said. So all this kind of stuff comes from the very high of the opposition to Trump. So those people should be much, much more careful about what they do. And to be honest, they know perfectly well what they're doing. That's what they're doing. So if you like, the discourse is much more poison, much less responsive than it used to be with the previous presidents. And it's undeniable that the amount of flack that was directed to Trump from way even before he started the campaign for president was so much more that than for anyone else, and they went so beyond what was the practice at the time that now it becomes natural to call anyone a Nazi.
I
Um,
mean, even the fact that Biden said the other day that it's time to put Trump in a bullseye. I mean, that stands out as an uncomfortable phrase right now, doesn't it? And of course, that's not a phrase that you would ever have seen. Bush's counterpart used back then about him. So it's the fact that this horrible level of street talk, internet talk has reached even the top levels of politics on both sides. And when you've got a candidate that is as rough and ready as Trump, you don't counter him by being rough and ready yourself, but by being better and not descending to that level. I mean, I think they used to say that the right sees the left as wrong and the left sees the right as evil. But now we seem to have moved to a case where each side sees the other as evil, and as Satan, and not just as a pantomime villain or a a Halloween figure, but something that properly needs to be exterminated. And that kind of emphasis is kind of what's led up to what happened at the weekend.
So look, there was pretty bad rhetoric against Hillary Clinton, and part of the reason here for me to oppose the idea that rhetoric, kind of is responsible, is because again, I think people should be encouraged to express their views, and if that's what their views are, they should be encouraged to kind of think more deeply about things. But look, Hillary, I remember, first of all, there was that moment in the debate, which of course was a good moment for Trump, but uh, she said something like, "We can't let this man become president," and he said, "Yeah, because you'd be in jail." And this was a big part of it. Like Hillary, so people were thinking, okay, are we going to let a criminal win? And of course, I kept hearing at the time when the fact that Trump seemed to be friendlier to Putin. I heard people say, "Yeah, we don't want Hillary because we don't want World War III." One crazy person hearing that can decide to shoot her because it's better than having World War III. Again, I would still blame the shooter. Thank you, Gigi Ryder, for the super chat. Gigi Ryder says Democrats and Marxist rhetoric made it predictable. Caroline Glick said Israeli left is similar to the USA left with relation to anti-patriotism, anti-Netanyahu, like anti-Trump. I mean, I don't agree. First of all, I don't agree in part because we were talking about Israeli politics on the Daily Objective today, and the spectrum is, in a sense, clearer in Israel because the left is, I would say, more pro-Palestinian, and the right is supposedly kind of more pro-Israel, although not as much as I'd like them to be. And then there are other issues, but this is when you're surrounded by savages who want nothing more than to slaughter you, you kind of prioritize that over other things. And so I think that's a big difference. There's an anti-American left in the U.S., but I also think people are not as politically in tune. Like they're not following closely enough, and they haven't thought about it as much as in a country surrounded by savages. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Thank you, Capitalist Nick, for the super chat. Nick says, "Can we do a show on the hard left's obsession with the Hannibal Directive, insinuating that IDF was behind October 7th?" That's actually an interesting topic to do a show on. I don't hear about it that much from the left, but if you scroll back to either October 7th itself or October 8th, you'll hear about it on this channel because I was saying that the Hannibal Directive should be applied to all of Gaza with relation to the hostages and just carpet bomb the place, knowing that hostages will die because you guarantee that it's not going to happen again, and you send a message to Israel's other enemies, which were emboldened by Israel's not doing this, to think twice before they act. All right, that was a lot of stuff and all over the place, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right when it comes to the rhetoric side of it. And I know you're a big fan of wrestling, and a lot of the political stuff seems a bit like that at the moment. It seems like the equivalent of the kind of talk of throwing somebody through a paper table. And that is
Not a paper table. It's a pre-broken table. It's an actual table. They've just, anyway, continue.
fair, fair enough. But yeah, yeah. I don't know what to say on that score, to be honest. I'm just thinking about what you were saying about the iconic image of it and how Trump reacted at the moment as well. I was just thinking about the I don't know if people, I don't want to spoil the film in case people haven't seen it, but like Christopher Walken in The Dead Zone at the end of the film based on the Stephen King novel, who's a political candidate in an assassination attempt, who at the moment when I don't know whether I'm going to spoil it now if I say this. But at the moment when an assassination attempt occurs, uses a baby as a shield to prevent him from being shot, and that revealing the character of the man, obviously costing him the election. I think this is the kind of image that is going to see things. It's going to capture this moment, but of course, what does it mean going forward from here? The election is a long way away. What does it mean for the Democrats? Does this mean that the moment for swapping Biden for somebody else has passed? Are they already ruining the fact that Biden wasn't swapped a week ago even? And if that moment has now passed, because who are going to be the two candidates on the ballot come November? Is it going to be Biden and Trump for one thing? And when we come to talking about the left and the right, we can talk about all the rhetoric of the left, but all the rhetoric of the right equally being poisonous and wrong, because accusing somebody of being anti-American because they don't vote Republican, that is also wrong. And even if there are destructive elements to policy on both sides, and some of the elements of supporting the core values of America have been damaged by the actions and attitudes of both left and right, it is still one America, and it does still hold itself together as a unified country in a way that few countries manage. So they are still the envy of the rest of the world in terms of people actually supporting the country that they live in. And I think despite a lot of the commentary that you see on this, particularly externally from other parts of the world, attempts to try and dilute that or persuade people that isn't as strong as it used to be, or certainly is no longer even in place, when clearly it is. There is a strong sense that America is a country supported by the citizens who live there, despite their differing opinions, despite the febrile atmosphere that we currently live in, despite the fact that this is the most irrational, emotional age that we've been in for ages. So that is something that should be built upon, and I hope it will be.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, a 20-year-old, how susceptible must he have been to any kind of rhetoric he would have come across online, or even, as you mentioned earlier on, at school, professors, especially university level, especially, are absolutely diabolical nowadays. If you study humanities today, you effectively waste your time and screwing up your mind to incredible degrees, to the point that your life probably will be worse off at the end of it. And of course, his actions were motivated by something we don't know what was in his head at that point. He apparently didn't leave behind anything. His parents didn't know much about it. He wasn't a very popular kid, so there's clearly nothing seriously pointing to a motivation at the moment. So it's as you mentioned, it's very hard at this point to work out why he did it. But ultimately, the reason why he did it is because we are allowing this kind of sense right now that good and bad are two things that exist out there, and you have to choose a side or the other. Good or bad ultimately is it's ethics. It depends on the values that you subscribe to, and whatever values you subscribe to in the Western world, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you subscribe roughly to the same kind of values. And it's only when you start questioning and brushing the values of freedom, liberty, individual freedom and responsibility, and this kind of sense that there is a world out there you cannot control, you cannot know, you cannot do anything about it, you must be afraid all the time. And that's what was being pushed every time you thrash the values that upon which the United States is actually formed. The Enlightenment value, the value based on freedom, individual freedom, and effectively the benevolent outcome that you can obtain by just going out there and making a life for yourself. But we don't teach that to kids. We just tell them that there is something out there that's scary, whether it's a disease or the climate or this kind of bullshit. And all this kind of made up new religions, secular religions, are screwing up their minds, of course, because all you do, you disseminate fear and uncertainty when you actually should point out, no, if you work hard, you'll make a life for yourself. As Ayn Rand pointed it quite nicely, the world you desire is out there, it's achievable, it's for you to take. So why are we still frightening people to death rather than inviting them to make a better life for themselves?
Yeah, Christopher in the chat has an Ayn Rand quote. America is the greatest and most moral country in the history of the world. And I'm thinking, you mentioned, kids don't learn that nowadays. It's not a part of the curriculum. Uh, and I was thinking, of course, I'm going to use this opportunity as a sales pitch. I was thinking about the course about the Constitution that James Valiant launched a few days ago, and the second session is in 3 days. Um, yeah, the fact that America happened, the fact that that Constitution was written is such a great achievement, and how many people, especially how many people at the highest echelons of power, how many people in general really understand that achievement? Because without that and without understanding why that is an achievement and what is going on today uh, is destroying that achievement, then I think we're unlikely to head in the right direction or reverse course and start, at least not heading in the wrong direction. Um, so I'm going to get to the super chat in a second, because I was thinking actually about the worst thing for Trump right now is the fact that there's almost 4 months until the election. I mean, if it was today, it would be it would be great for him. Actually, if it was next week, it would be even better because historically, when there's a party has their convention, they get a bump in the poll numbers just because they're in the news all the time for a whole week, or for 4 days. So that's happening now. I think Trump is um, gonna probably announce his vice presidential nominee today. So yeah, this is these are I hate to say it because it's in the context of an assassination attempt, but these past few days and weeks electorally have been very good for Trump, and in that context. Capitalist Nick, thank you for the additional super chat. He says, would Trump a second Trump presidency be good for Israel? Trump is on record saying that Biden should get out of the way and let them finish the task on hand. I think if you judge the two main party nominees on both what they've done since they've both been president and what they've been saying and what they've been saying recently. Yeah, I mean, I don't trust Trump with anything because I think he's such a loose cannon and such a, child that the smallest error by Netanyahu saying something would change his whole foreign policy. But yeah, that aside, yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult for Trump to be worse than Biden on Israel. But if he does decide to be, I trust that he will be. But no, if you're just looking at that issue, I absolutely think Trump would be better than Biden.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. And of course, one of the biggest failings of Trump is his utter unpredictability and the fact that a statement against somebody or for somebody can be withdrawn and swapped with the opposite, without a blink. Look at his choices of VP options that seem to be on the table at the moment. I mean, most of them he's slagged off at some point and fallen out with at some point, and now they're back in favor. So, I mean, that itself tells you that, a statement one way or the other can't be counted upon. And that is certainly one of his failings. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, yes, Trump presidency is going to be much better than what Biden has done throughout the 4 years of his tenure for Israel. As you both pointed out, this Trump's kind of irrational and baby-like behavior, it doesn't help. But I'm pretty convinced that once he's in the Oval Office and he has to deal with certain things, it's not going to be as as temperamental as he can be when he's not actually in office. We've seen when he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. We've seen him in various occasions when he hit Harris in the head and got the problem, put it away for a few years. So I'm quite optimistic about the fact that the whole point is not going to be there alone. It's going to be advice. It's going to be lots of civil servants putting pressure on him. So in a way, his kind of ego will be curtailed somewhat. But anyway, yeah, just in the face of it, another 4 years of Biden would be disastrous for Israel. Just look at what our genius lot already done. Our foreign office went to Israel the other day, and the first thing he made a title himself, just asking for an immediate ceasefire. It's like, I mean, we're talking about the same guy who was bitching about the lack of policemen around London, and he had one just behind him. So these are the kind of intellectual geniuses we are spreading across the world, and generally the leadership that we find ourselves with. Just look at the G7 a couple of weeks ago in Italy. You had the Pope invited to talk to the G7 leaders about AI. You know, a guy whose life is a medieval mess, believing in ghosts and all sort of crap, lecturing the leaders, the elected leaders of the world about artificial intelligence is something which you couldn't make up in a comedy sketch. But that's the kind of world we live in, and we have to pretend we take this kind of buffoon seriously. Well, 2024, you cannot still believe in this kind of ghosts and irrational crap that was designed to scare children into going to bed early. It's just ludicrous.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, who are they going to invite? Milei? I think they're not going to do that to themselves anymore. The Pope is kind of a safe bet.
Yeah, it's a kind
Um,
of level that they can get. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, where was this comment? Oh yeah, Best Monster says, "I hate Trump's stance on Ukraine war." Yeah, and that's the thing. If you go issue by issue and try to figure out who's going to be better or worse, you'll find different answers on each issue. And with Ukraine, I've said on this channel, I think even though we cover Israel because of in large part because of the cultural response in the West. Uh, Militarily, geopolitically, I think the Ukraine war is more important. Ukraine is a country that wants, unlike Israel, wants to defend itself and does everything it can to defend itself, but can't against a country like Russia without our help. And without our help, we are sending a message to not just Russia, but other evildoers in the world like China, like Iran, like North Korea, that we won't stand by our allies when they're attacked. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Um, I thought there was something else here I wanted to comment on, but I don't remember what it was. But there was, I think, Richard, you said earlier something about Trump being more restrained in this upcoming um, in the convention and in his convention speech. And we were talking about how in the debate, he was restrained and kind of, yeah, he's being advised well. Now, again, what we see as restrained from Trump is compared to what we've seen from Trump for 9 years. It doesn't take much to be restrained compared to that. But yeah, Biden was doing the work for Trump up until now. This horrible thing that happened, again, is helpful to him, and the election is his to lose in a sense. Like he has to screw up big time for Biden to get 4 more years. Um, yeah, any thoughts on that? And then I'll go to the super
Well,
chat.
I mean, a screw up is certainly possible, and a foot in mouth is certainly possible. And as you say, there's 4 months to go. So from that point of view, anything could happen. But it is at the moment, quite a large mountain for the Democrats to climb, even with some Trump losing his footing partway from here to November. I think what I saw in a bit of clips from an interview that Trump gave after the assassination attempt, and he was talking. He said about the upcoming convention. He said it would be very. He said he was going to give a humdinger of a speech, and he said, "quote It would be very bad if I got up and started going wild about how horrible everybody is, how corrupt and crooked, even if it's true." Unquote. And he did say that he was going to swat. He was binning his current speech, which is extremely tough, to go for a speech that is more unifying. And he said, quote, "I've got a chance to bring the country together. I was given that chance." Now, as you say, he could be just simply being well advised. But I think you do have to take a step back a sense and just consider that for everybody on the planet, including somebody like Trump, with all his ego and his babyish behavior, he was still millimeters away from that being the end. And it is possible that that gives anybody a moment of considerable reflection and introspection about what their life means and what they can make the next part of their life mean. So will that lead to a tempering down to some extent? I do think there is some reason to think that it might, but there will be some reverting to type as well. So it will never be as much as I hope it will, I'm sure. But this is you really got to consider that, because I think that is underestimated here. All right, how you react in the immediate moment with the fist and everything, that's one thing. That's partly the adrenaline. You've got to get off stage. You want to make a good exit. But what you actually think when you've shut your front door, when you're in the quietness of your own space, and you consider that could have been, my last afternoon, to put it bluntly, then that is a cause for thinking whether you're getting everything right or not. So time will tell.
Yeah, and that was particularly visible in the first interview he gave, I think to a CNN, somebody, where he mentioned a few times that he could have been dead. In pure Trump style, as he does the interview, you can see he's beginning to think about, geez, this could have been me over. So hopefully it's gonna give him a different perspective, making it a bit less confrontational, a bit more thoughtful, as thought to behold in itself. But on the other hand, the misfortune of the Democrat is in their own making, because already 4 or 5 years ago we knew that there was something wrong with Biden. You could tell in so many ways, the way he walks. He clearly had some cognitive problem, whether it's Parkinson's, dementia, something wrong there. It was obvious. And for the last 4 years, together with the media, they all plotted to cover his ass, effectively, not showing that he wasn't up to the job. And then suddenly you had to fight another campaign, and you come out of the woodwork, you're the fridge in this case. And when you find yourself debating the other guy, of course you're going to be shown up. Of course, it's going to be obvious to the people who never saw you in various situations, because they were just watching MSNBC or CNN, and they were used to seeing the Biden from 50 years ago or something. So, it's typical.
So I was just going to add to that, the evidence that he hasn't met his cabinet hasn't met for, what is it, 9 months or something. And many of the people within his government who would normally have met the president regularly say they haven't had meetings with him for like 2 years, and the like. So a lot of that is indication that this is not a country being run as it should, regardless of what you think of which party is in charge or not, or which particular individual is in charge or not. It isn't the sharp machine that it ought to be for the defenders of the free world. And of course, that can have effects on the rest of the globe.
Yeah. And again, the kind of scorched earth policy that the left tends to use, both here and the United States, just look at the use of the impeachment as a political weapon. Just look at how they go out for leather in order to achieve their goal of destroying their opponent. And in doing that, they destroy all sorts of institutions. And then when they need them, they've been carved out by their own action. So try now to complain and say, well, as Richard said, they should have replaced Biden way before, or at least come out openly and say, okay, the guy's not up to it. We're going to replace with a VP. just be open to your electorate. You don't treat everybody like an idiot. We're not blind.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Thank you, Capitalist Nick. Did I read this or did, did I read the anyway? I'll read it and tell me if I already. I don't think I read it. I think there was two previous ones. Capitalist Nick Kit says, could we ever try to get Caroline Glick on the show? Our principal body of work on the Middle East conflict is second to none. I completely agree. Our audience sizes that the issue, well, I don't know, it could be an issue and it could understandably be an issue. Somebody typically speaks to tens or hundreds of thousands. They might not want to be on a show with an audience of sometimes thousands, sometimes less. But I don't know that that's going to be an issue. Yes. I think we can and should have her. Part of the reason why we don't have as many guests is just a, manpower, man hours issue that we just don't have the time to reach out because we try to do more shows than we are actually, able to always do. But yes, the short answer is we do intend. That is a name that has been on my mind and we've talked about. Um, Parting thoughts?
I guess my parting thought is to return to the individual again and to appeal to each individual to think about what you yourself can do if you want to dial down the tone slightly, because it's too easy to point the finger, to blame the political class, the media, the culture you live in, and not recognize your own part in it. And of course, your own central part in your own life, because that's where change really happens.
Yeah, don't hope that some politician is going to make your life better. If you don't go out there and grab the opportunities that are in front of you, nobody will do it for you. So just ignore policy, just follow it, but don't make it the point of your life because ultimately, A, it's bound to disappoint you, and B, it's just not going to make your life any better anyway. So.
So tomorrow we're talking on the reality show about the illegal occupation. We will be debunking the illegal occupation lie. This is ahead of an International Court of Justice. I think it's that one. They're all the same to me. Talking about if Israel's occupation is illegal, demanding that Israel end that occupation. This is well, this is going to be one of those episodes where we try to kind of do something that isn't necessarily on the news of the day, although it is, but is really something that hopefully can be of value, even if you watch it years later. Make sure you join us for that. Marco, Richard, you will both be on. I will be on as well. I hope you all tune in. Where can people find more from you?
Check out the sister channel to this and all the shorter form videos on there, taken from lots of TDOs and clips from this show with added images for your social media feeds that really get to the point in just 2 or 3 minutes.
And I'm Razi Ginsburg on X. When I see things that annoy me on X, I sometimes reply to them. So if you don't have enough of me being annoyed by stuff in the world on these shows, then you can follow me there. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.